Oh, hey, didn't see you there. Uh, I'm well. So, we're here today to talk about video game launches. Video game launches can be exciting for like so many people, and from fans to developers finally getting their game out, and just reviewers, everybody loves a good video game launch. But lately, and I think especially over the last decade, there's been quite a few um, bad or tumultuous video game launches, and I wanted to come here today and talk about that a little bit. And so this is going to be a top 10 list of the worst video game launches of the last decade or so. It's definitely like tough when a video game launches and it's just something that you're so hyped about, and then it finally launches and you're like, what the fuck happened? What happened? And this list right here, I didn't necessarily play all these, but these are ones that I personally have seen over the years, and I was like, yeah, it's weird that didn't work out, right? And we're just gonna go through them and talk about them for a little bit and why the launch was so bad. So first off, number 10, WWE 2K20. So the WWE 2K series to me has never been something that's like amazing or anything, but for the most part it was at least playable. Yeah, so it was kind of weird when 2K20 launched and had so many issues that people honestly couldn't play the game. Like, it was really bad. So I know that back in like 2018, 2K had launched NBA 2K18 on Switch, and it had a lot of problems. Like, it was really bad, which is crazy because they released NBA 2K on Switch, and it's actually really good. It's been good like every year. So it was weird that their 2K on there was so bad, so glitchy, you couldn't play it, and looked terrible, like everything. And 2K20 essentially is that, but for like all the other consoles. So I think that's what made this even worse, is that, okay, it's one thing for a AAA company to release something on Switch sometimes, and it doesn't work as well. Like, people kind of expect that sometimes, but for it to release on like PS4 and Xbox and everything just absolutely terrible, I think a lot of people were caught off guard. But apparently they had like switched like devs and like the people who were in charge behind the scenes, and there was a whole bunch of like problems in development, and they had to start over and do other shit, and it's just like all this stuff going on. And yeah, fittingly, WWE 2K20 came out really bad, really bad. Like, people were glitching through rings, and like the fights were like you were hardly able to see them. Like, the FPS was all just off, and just like you couldn't do anything. It was really bad. So yeah, but then again, I also think that a lot of people, they weren't expecting that much from. I think they were expecting more than that from 2K, but I also think that people weren't expecting that much. But I can definitely remember, at least in the last decade, that the release of that game was bad. It was very bad. So yeah. Alright. So number 9 up next, and this is a game that I actually really enjoy, but I will say that the launch and just the launch window of it and everything was very strange and very weird, and definitely a lot of controversy. And that is Pokemon Sword and Shield. So I played this game for hours. I loved the DLC and everything. I played so much of it. But when it released, there was definitely quite a few issues. The first thing being that they had cut out a lot of the Pokemon. There was only 400 Pokemon available at the start, and there were people who started the whole campaign of like, against Game Freak and Pokemon Company because they didn't include some of their favorite Pokemon in there. And eventually we got most of them back in the game, and then people were upset about that because they basically came back in DLC in a way, even though you can technically get them for free. Somebody does have to pay for the DLC, and then you're able to get them. But yeah, it was problematic, and then people thought that the graphics weren't quite up to snuff, and I'll give Game Freak a little bit of benefit of the doubt because they do have to like pump out games every year or so for Pokemon Company, and that was their first time like making this on an actual console that wasn't like the DS or a Game Boy. So like I understand that, but yeah, it definitely wasn't the leap that we all thought Pokemon was gonna make, and it didn't help that one of the devs at Game Freak had said something about like, oh, we feel like this is our Breath of the Wild. And don't get me wrong, the wild area, and especially in the DLCs, how it's all just a wild area, those are really cool, but the rest of the game is just pretty like standard like Pokemon, and I think people were expecting a much bigger leap from it, and that's kind of the issue with the game. It's like it's still fun, it's still Pokemon, but it definitely wasn't Breath of the Wild levels, and that's kind of something you'll see on this whole list. It kind of gets people in trouble. It gets studios in trouble when they say something like, "Oh yes, we feel like this is so ambitious, this is so great, this is going to be compared to some other great game. People are going to love it," and then it comes out and it's not exactly what they were talking about, and you'll see that in the next one as well. And yeah, it's very disappointing, and people are very upset about that because they like to get what they are promised. So that being said, I think Pokemon Sword and Shield still a very good Pokemon game. With the DLC, it's even better, honestly, and I hope that from the beginning, the game, whatever next game they make, will be like what Pokemon Sword and Shield is now. But we kind of need these games to be that from the start. And that's an excellent segue into our next one, number 8, which is No Man's Sky. So, No Man's Sky, I say the No Man's Sky, and the reason why I put like kind of that game up here, like I put 2K20 because I feel like it was really bad, but most people I don't think were like too surprised, but it was really bad. Pokemon Sword and Shield I put up here because it was like an okay, like decent Pokemon game, and then it's gotten better, but definitely the beginning of it was bad. This game, it's gotten better now as far as what I've been told. Like I played it for a little bit after they did some updates and added some stuff, and it was decent at times, still not exactly what I expected it to be. Like when they launched it and Hello Games was talking about the game, they're making it sound like you were going to be able to do whatever the hell you wanted in space. That's what it sounded like. It's like you're going to be able to have a ship and be a space pirate or be a trader or do whatever you want, and that's just not what the game ended up being, and they like, I know PlayStation was working with them when it first came out, and they were going hard like promoting that game, and the I can't remember his name now, but the guy who runs Hello Games, he was pumping this shit up to be like the next big thing, and I think some people were cautious of that because they were a small indie studio, and he was saying that like all the stuff that he was talking about sounded like it was stuff that even AAA companies couldn't do. So yeah, it was kind of like, how is that gonna happen exactly? I don't know about that, man. And yeah, it was just a very weird thing, And of course it came out, and then at first, the other thing is it only came out for PlayStation at first, for PlayStation 4. And when it came out, well, it was buggy and glitchy, and it didn't work at times. And on top of that, the game itself was not what they promised whatsoever. It was just not good. It was not good. I know now that you can do so much more in the game, and I mean, I played it, I think the end of last year, beginning of this year, and it's decent now. Still not what I expected. Like I wanted to be a space pirate and just like, attack people's ships and like take stuff. And you can't quite do that from what I know. Maybe the newest update did that. I'll check later. But yeah, it just wasn't exactly what I was expecting. But definitely a much better game now. People are absolutely enjoying it now. But the launch of it was really bad. The only reason I put it higher is because it was a small indie studio, and I think some people who understood video games as a whole, they pretty much knew, like, I don't think there's any way that these guys can deliver on the promise that they're giving. Like, this is some small, like, studio. There's no way they're gonna be able to do this, right? So, yeah, I think it was kind of expected they wouldn't be able to deliver that on day one, like, ever. Alright, so up next, number 7 is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5. So I was, digging around trying to find, like, over the last decade games that they had bad launches and people were expecting some big things, and honestly I totally forgot about this one because it just came and went. Like, I remember when it launched and I'm like, I used to play Tony Hawk's Pro Skater like 1 and 2 way back in the day, but I'm not like a huge skateboarding fan or anything. So this wasn't a launch that I was like, oh yeah, I can't wait to play Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5. But I do remember it coming out and I'm like, oh, that's good for people. Yeah, that should be cool. And then, like, it was like just nothing. Like, you didn't hear anything about the game. It was like, what happened? Like, what happened to Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5? And you find out later that it was just really, really bad. Like, it was really bad. And it's like, how did you ruin the launch of that? Like, it's just, you gave skateboarding and, like, but apparently, like, just everything was off with it. Like, the quality of it, the physics, the gameplay, everything was just, yeah, it was just so bad. It's like, it shouldn't be that hard, Sometimes these companies just go, like, a little bit too much one way, and you're like, what are you doing? Just make a good skateboarding game. Like, y'all have done it before. I don't understand. But yeah, it got really bad reviews. Players hated it. I'm pretty sure they had took it back a lot of times. It was like, what the hell happened? Like, it should be the simplest thing to make a good Tony Hawk game, So it's crazy that even happened. But that is the nature of this list. Moving on to number 6. Aliens Colonial Marines. So, this game is one that I didn't end up playing because it was so bad. Like, and this is one of those things where they released this amazing, trailer and footage and everything, and you see this footage and you're like, wow, this game is going to be absolutely incredible. And then it's not. Like, absolutely nothing that they had in those trailers or what they talked about before was in the game. Like, the AI was terrible, the game looked like shit, it didn't play well, the gameplay wasn't fun, the story was just not good. And, luckily we got Alien Isolation later, which was a much, much better game. But Alien Colonial Marines is definitely, I would say, in the decade, one of the top disappointments, because it's like, especially like nerds and everything, we fucking love Aliens. Like, Aliens is an awesome franchise. We love seeing great games by that, like Predator games, Alien games, whatever. And it just was not good. Like, it was bad. Like, there are people who were like, it feels like, when you're shooting the aliens, it feels like you're mowing down like some low level like grunt in some random like sci-fi video game. Like, it just wasn't cool, it wasn't fun. And it's like, how do you gotta nail, that's the one thing you have to nail in your Aliens game, is having fun aliens to go against. And it's like, it's just another one of those things where it's like, there must have been like problems in development, problems, with the studios, whatever, and it's just, what they put out was not what people were expecting at all. Like, it's just no, how do you mess it up? Like, it's just such a cool concept, aliens in general. It's like, how do you mess it up? Like I said, thank God we got Alien Isolation later, because much better game with an alien that actually feels dangerous, very dangerous. So shout out to that one. So up next, this is gonna be a fun one. Anthem, and this is just EA, man. EA and BioWare. Two companies where, like, back in the day, you see those, and you're like, oh, this is going to be a great game. And nowadays, you see them, and you're like, think I'm gonna wait for some reviews, possibly for, you know, the game to go down in price, and then maybe I'll try it depending on what they add to the game later on. Like if they fix it and patch it and put in this, like yeah, it has been a problem. Anthem's another one where it's just like, wow, this game looks like it's gonna be awesome. I remember like the hype for it was insane. It was through the roof. Like people were like, oh my god, BioWare is back. They're making this awesome, you know, RPG, you know, customization, you know, story driven. It's just incredible game, and I can't wait. And boy, that is not what we got. I played the little demo that they put out for Anthem, and I was like, this is pretty fun, I guess. But when I was playing it, I was like, damn, this is starting to feel like this combat's a little shallow, and this like this game's gonna end up being kind of repetitive, and you know, like that's the vibe that I got, and it turns out I was right. Because when the actual game came out, it turns out that there was very little actual like RPG elements that were good. The gear wasn't great. The combat got really old, though it was a beautiful game, I will say. Anthem is very beautiful. And I think that kind of tricked people. They're like, wow, this looks so good. But then there just wasn't much to it. The story was lackluster. The characters were bleh. The loot systems and the combat and everything were just mediocre. And it's like this beautiful thing dressed... it's this ugly thing that was dressed up as this beautiful experience, and it just really wasn't that. You know, everything about it was just disappointing. And sometimes it sucks just when something's disappointing, you know, rather than being great or even good or even decent. Like, it was just bad. And they had like Metacritic scores of like 50, 55. Like, it was bad, you know, when it came out. It's like, damn, how is it this bad? And then on top of that, I mean, it's EA, so there's gonna be like, obviously there's gonna be a few like microtransactions and loot boxes in there. I don't think it was as bad as another game we're gonna talk about, but yeah, it was pretty bad. So Anthem, yeah, I had to put it at that 5 spot. And then up next, this one literally just came out, and I love this game. Like, I've enjoyed it a lot, but even I can say like it's not what was totally promised, and that is at number 4, Cyberpunk 2077. So Cyberpunk is probably one of the most hyped games I have seen in a long while. Like, this game has been in development for 7 years, I think since 2013, 2012 maybe, I think 2013. And like, the hype levels for this game were insane, and honestly, it's still a really good game, which is why I put it at 4 rather than higher. But the launch for this game is probably one of the worst I have seen in recent memory. It's really bad. Like, CD Projekt Red has lost a lot of goodwill in video game players. They've lost a lot of stock with like investors and everything, and it's bad. Like, it's still sold like, I believe, 13 million copies, and that's with people getting refunds on the PS4 and Xbox One. And that's honestly where the issues lie, is that this game has been in development for 7 years, which means they've been developing this for the current gen consoles, not the next gen. You know, and then all of a sudden, and this is what I believe would happen, I think PS4 Pro and Xbox One X came out, and CD Projekt Red was like, okay, well, we can do a little bit more with these. Let's start to optimize it for these. And then I think slowly the PS4 and the base PS4 and Xbox One started to get left behind. And then all of a sudden, you know, a year or two after PS4 Pro and Xbox One X come out, and they announced their next gen consoles, and then I'm sure CD Projekt Red is like, damn, we can do like ray tracing and all this other shit. Let's start trying to optimize it for these now. And of course, it's going to be optimized for PC pretty well, and I play on PC on my gaming laptop, and it's pretty good on there, honestly. I still have a lot of bugs, you know, nothing too game breaking most of the time, but I have a lot of bugs and plenty of like stutters with the frame rate and everything. Like, there's definitely issues, and for the most part, there's some content that they said was going to be in there that's not in there. Even though it's still a great game, the side missions are awesome, the story is amazing, the characters are great, the acting, everything. But the AI in it is not great. It's not what they let us on to believe. I thought that was when the game was coming out. I thought that you're going to be able to interact with like every NPC and have these like crazy stories that just like unfold even with them, or that you'd be able to romance like half the city, and it was like, no, you get like 2 romances, and most of the NPCs just have like throwaway lines, and they're kind of like the same people repeated. So it's like not really breaking ground with that. And then the RPG elements aren't that great. You can't customize that much after like the initial customization screen, and you can't customize your car. The crafting is kind of useless because you just constantly get better guns all the time. So yeah, and then apparently crafting is breaking people's games and corrupting their save files, so that's not good. There's definitely a lot of broken things in this game, even though I really like it. And it needs to be fixed. I will give CD Projekt Red some credit because they are starting to implement patches, and I will say I don't blame the devs because they've already been working hard. They've been going through crunch, which is another thing that came out when they've been delaying this game so many times. And they're talking about they've been facing crunch, and on top of that, apparently their bonuses were tied to having good Metacritic scores and everything. So just a lot of things going on behind the scenes there that are just not good. And CD Projekt Red was one of those game companies that are like, oh, we want to do good things for our customers and make sure that their experience is good and they get their money's worth. And they've very quickly become actually top of the list of the non-consumer friendly ones now, even though they were the most consumer friendly for a long time. And I feel like it's like that Batman quote. It's like you either die the hero or live long enough to become the villain, and it's like exactly that. Like, it's crazy. So to see like CD Projekt Red where they are now, it sucks because they're a company I really like. I love The Witcher, love The Witcher 3 and everything, and those are awesome. But yeah, this whole company needs to be held accountable for the fact that they didn't deliver on what they promised, even if it's still better than a lot of these games that I'm talking about, even after that. But yeah, it's crazy. So number 3, this is Final Fantasy 14, and I guess even a little bit 13, just that kind of block of Final Fantasies where I know I'm not like a huge Final Fantasy fan. I played like 7 and stuff like that, Crystal Chronicles or something like that, stuff like that. But I do understand, like, Final Fantasy has been around for a long time. It's a huge franchise, and most Final Fantasy people definitely count 13 and 14 as like some of the worst of all time, like without question. They're just bad. Like, they released with bugs. They were, I believe 14 was actually kind of broken. Like, some people couldn't play it, and like that's not good. That's not good. You want to be able to play the game, and it's Final Fantasy. Like, people are going to be getting that on like day one because people are huge Final Fantasy fans, and they weren't even able to play the game. Like, that's not good. So yeah, that's not good. Like, releasing a game in that state, especially something so big from a AAA company that people, for the most part, they trust pretty much. Because I know that Final Fantasy 13 before that, it was met with very similar reception. So maybe people were a little bit more cautious of 14, but I still think at that point they were like, okay, but this is Final Fantasy. They had, maybe a few blunders between, 10 and 14 or whatever, but I think they were still willing to go buy it. And then on top of that, it was made into a massive multiplayer online RPG, and I think 13 was also. And some people definitely didn't like that because not all Final Fantasy fans were fans of that. So yeah, definitely Square Enix has shown that they're not afraid to try new things. And even with 15, when that came out, there were some people who weren't fans of like the combat in there and stuff like that. So it's like, yeah, I mean, they're trying to do new things, but also at the same time, there's some things that people especially fans of the series who've been fans for a long time, they just didn't like, and it was not a good launch. They did release a like updated version of it with Realm Reborn, and that was apparently so much better. But this is just kind of the trend that we have with this list in general, is that a lot of these companies, especially in this last decade or so, they release a game in a broken state or just not as good as it should be, or missing like some content that it should have already had. And then they're like, well, we're going to update it later. It'll be fine, guys. And some games, they do update them later and they're a lot better. Some games are so bad they just go away, like Colonial Marines or something like that, or Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5. But yeah, some games obviously they actually get better, like No Man's Sky, Pokemon Sword and Shield, even the one that we're about to talk about next, which at number 2 is Star Wars Battlefront. So this game, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. Like that, I mean, you can see I have this shirt right here with the Jawas on it. This is from my podcast, Jabbering Jawa, and I'm a huge Star Wars fan. So I played the first Battlefront. I never like owned it because I think that was between when like generations were changing, like from 360 to Xbox One and everything, and I didn't get it at first because I was kind of new to the Xbox One. I didn't get it yet. But Star Wars Battlefront 2 was coming out, and I'm like, this looks amazing. Like, it looks beautiful. The graphics are amazing. It looks like it's gonna be awesome. I mean, it's Battlefront. How could you mess it up? And well, EA found a way, man. They found a way, and it sucks because like when I was a kid, EA was one of those companies you look at them and you're like, this game is gonna be certified gold. It's gonna be amazing. It's gonna be so good because EA is making it. And nowadays, you have to be really cautious with whatever they release. And I will say, since then, they've released things like Fallen Order, and it's actually really good. And then I think some people like Squadrons, but not. It was a little on the fence with that one. But when Battlefront 2 released, I mean, the game was lacking some content. It had just the worst predatory microtransactions that I think anybody's ever seen. And I remember clearly when that came out, I was like, you know what? Like, I'm done with EA. I can't mess with them anymore. Like, they really released this game like this and then put in these pay to win, like they were straight up pay to win microtransactions into this game, and it was bad. Like, it was so bad. Like, it caused lawsuits. They had to change laws because of this game. Like, it's insane how bad it was. And I was like, dude, like, how can you possibly do that? And like, EA didn't understand it at first. Like, oh, they don't get why we're the bad guys. Like, if people want to pay for these, then they can. If not, but it's like, if you don't pay for it, then you're going through this grind heavy, like, ridiculous, game. And it's where it's like, okay, well, I can make progress if I eventually kill 5,000 people, which I'm not going to do because these people who paid for the better gear and these experience things are going to keep beating me, and I'm not going to kill 5,000 people, so I guess I'll just pay for it. So yeah, like, it was bad. It was really bad. The loot boxes, everything, it was bad. Like, oh my god. It was one of the worst launches, and Battlefront has gotten better. They've gotten rid of pretty much most of that. I will say it's because I did get it when it was like really, really cheap, and I will say it's a really fun game. It's still a little grindy because like, you have to get certain skins or whatever. You have to do quite a bit, but I have no problem with playing through a game and doing things in the game to actually get something. It's just those predatory microtransactions were just some of the worst I've ever seen in any video game. And I'm glad that shit got nipped in the bud, because it was disgraceful, honestly. It was really bad. So yeah, Star Wars Battlefront, absolutely deserving of that. And I bet you're wondering, after all that, what could possibly be number one? I think you all know what number one is. Fallout 76. Fallout 76 is probably the worst launch of any game that I've seen, and that's even including Battlefront, because it had Like everything that was bad about Battlefront, and then some. Like I was talking about lack of content in Star Wars Battlefront 2 when it came out, but Fallout 76, like literally, like people reporting they couldn't really do shit. Like there weren't NPCs to interact with. There was barely a story. Like it was buggy as shit. They couldn't find like people online, and then on top of that, the game was just broken. Like it was broken. It was absolutely broken. And it's just like, how do you release this game in this state? It was broken and unfinished. And Bethesda, I think, out of anybody, has lost the most goodwill out of any company. And it's like, hey, they at least released Doom Eternal, which is really good. But like, damn, man, like Fallout 76 was bad. It was so bad. I they I'm sorry, it's just crazy. Like on top of like the game being broken, they released some paid service which was like $99 for a year to be able to use your own private server on the thing. Like it was insane. It's like they were absolutely tone deaf. It's like you had this terrible launch, and then you're gonna be like, hey guys, by the way, you can have your own private server and blah 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 and this and that and these perks if you pay $99. It's like, do you read the room? What are you doing? They sent people helmets. Like they sent helmets to people that were like moldy and like messed up. Like it was the most terrible launch I've ever seen. And I had never seen this before, but literally maybe a few weeks or a month, probably less than that, that Fallout 76 came out, I had gone to a GameStop and I was looking at shelves, and they had already discounted Fallout 76 to half price. I'm pretty sure now you can get a copy of Fallout 76 to like a GameStop or something for like maybe $5 or $10. Like that game had zero value a few weeks to a month after its launch. That is insane. That's crazy. It's crazy. Like how do you launch something that bad, that unfinished, and on top of that have microtransactions and like just whew, it was bad. It was bad. Like I don't understand what Bethesda was thinking with the entire launch, but it was not good. It was not good. It was terrible. So that was my little top 10 list of the worst game launches, in my opinion, in the last decade. Let me know in the comments what you think were some pretty bad game launches, or if you think that it should be in a different order, there should be some other games added in there. Let me know. And I hope that you enjoyed, and I will see you on the next one. Peace.